Welcome to today's episode of Awaken Her. I'm your host, Corissa, and I couldn't be more excited to share this conversation with Veronika Archer. In our discussion, we cover the complexities of co-parenting, the impact of our internal energies on our children, and how we navigate the emotional landscape of post-separation life. Veronika shares her insights on the importance of aligning our energies and offers practical tools for shifting from a place of guilt and resentment to one of acceptance and positive influence. Whether you're navigating co-parenting or looking to improve your relationship with your children, this snippet of our episode together is filled with wisdom and actionable strategies you won't want to miss. Let's dive in.
One example that you mentioned that I wanted to address was putting the kids in the middle, right? So that's one of the things that's really harmful to the kids. So the strategy might be, okay, I'm not going to talk bad about the ex. I'm going to communicate with the ex and make sure that we're quote unquote co-parenting or making decisions together. And you're like, I'm doing everything I can, but my kids still feel put in the middle. And what I discovered for myself is that even though I was saying and doing the right, quote unquote, right things within myself, I knew that my ex was talking about me, was damaging my relationship. And I wanted more than anything for my kids to come live with me full time. You know, I didn't pursue that. I didn't go to court for that, but I definitely wanted it in my being. And I wanted them to have less of a relationship with their dad and those kinds of things. And I had a lot of emotion inside myself, you know, anger, resentment towards him, and the desire for them to be with me. And what I believe is that they can sense that. Human beings are very intuitive, even if we don't recognize it. Kids have not yet been conditioned to not be intuitive. And so they pick up on even more than we know or believe that they are. And so that's why I talk about shifting your energy, because if you can be at a place, I talk about holding the vision, right? So holding the vision of the relationship that you want with your child if your ex were not sabotaging it. Holding the vision of the trajectory that you want for your child, the future you want for your child. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about like, I want my child to be a doctor. I'm talking about like, I want my child to be healthy and happy and have a positive relationship with both of their parents or something like that, right? You hold that vision and then you shift your own internal energy to match the vibration of that vision. So if you're feeling guilt or resentment towards your ex, that's not matching the frequency of I want my child to be healthy and happy and have a positive relationship with their parents, right? So this is a whole process, right? Then you're like, okay, why do I feel guilt and resentment? You use tools like what you share, Corissa, to work on that, right? How do I heal my own guilt and resentment and shift it? This is not about fake positive thinking, right? We don't want to deny how we're feeling, but we do want to recognize how we're feeling and shift it so that our energy shifts. And I want to give two examples, one of why I know this to be true and two of how this works. So one, how do I know this to be true? Well, my kids are now young adults, and so I have the freedom to have more open conversations with them when they were younger. And my middle son, who's now 20, said to me sometime in this past year about how he and his younger brother really felt put in the middle between me and their dad. And I asked him, I was like, well, why is that? Because I never pressured you to choose. I always supported your relationship with your dad. I didn't say this to him, but I was like, I did all the things I was supposed to in terms of making sure that dad had equal time, all the things. And he couldn't really think of a specific example other than things his dad was doing. So there were things his dad was doing that was making him and his brother feel put in the middle. But that's when I really sat with it. And that's when I was like, the epiphany of, oh my goodness, I never said anything to the kids, but I felt it and they knew it.
Yeah. I love this because from a human design perspective, I don't know if you're into human design. Some of my listeners are. I'm just thinking even about anyone who has an undefined root center or an undefined head center, right? Those are the two pressure centers in the chart. This is how it's going to make sense to you. It's like people will implicitly feel you putting pressure on them if you are defined in either of those centers when they are undefined. And it's not that you're doing anything. It is literally down to, like you just said, the energetics of it.
Exactly.
To your point, that they will perceive and pick up on the things you're not saying, right? That's the intuition part of it.
Yeah. And then the second part is that I have seen some amazing shifts. My relationship with my boys, they come and go. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're more strained. And, so there are ups and downs even now. But without fail, whenever I shift into a space of like grief or guilt or things like that, I no longer feel resentment towards my ex. Is that true? I'm not sure that that's true. Anytime those emotions come up, my relationships with my kids seem to take a turn for the worse. And every time I shift back into holding the vision, keeping my own energy centered and clear, my relationship with my kids will enhance and expand. And this is from, right now, 2 of my kids live in another state. So we're not even in the same house. I don't even see them regularly or that frequently. But even geographically removed, I can be where I am and I can shift my energy, and I'll suddenly like get a message from my son, or we'll have a really beautiful conversation or something like that. So I know this to be true because I have observed it and experienced it within myself. And then, of course, doing it with teaching my clients this and seeing the shifts that happen. One of the things about energy is, maybe your audience, people listening, maybe they're already connected with sort of the woo. I don't know. But I think a lot of people think of like this energy kind of work and shifting your energy as being woo. And like, I don't know, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I worked as a biologist for 20 years. And so it's really important to me to, I know something to be true when there's a consistent outcome that can be repeated. And so I've taught this now to many clients, and I've practiced it myself many times, and the outcome is consistently the same. So that's why I can confidently say, like, number one thing is shift your own energetic template.
I love that. And thank you for bringing up your background as a scientist, because that was a very important point I think that people should know, because this isn't just coming out of nowhere. There's evidence, right?
I'm all about experiments. I experimented on my kids. I'm so sorry, but I did. I mean, we all do as parents, right?
Parenting is just one giant experiment.
One giant experiment.
Honestly, like what you're sharing is so helpful. So you've definitely given us so much value already. So I'd love for you to kind of keep going if you have got more that you want to share in terms of like the tools, because now it's like, okay, so how do I go about shifting my energy aside from like holding the vision, and what else can we do? Because like for me, like as an EFT practitioner, like that's one ways in which I use to help shift people's energy, right? To help them release the stagnancies. There's a lot of somatic work, right? So we're working constantly with the body.
Yeah.
We're constantly working on understanding our nervous system, how to address our emotional triggers, how to release all of that, because then we can get to a place, I hope, because this is kind of where I feel like I have done this work on myself and where I see that I'm headed, which is that acceptance piece that you touched on before. It's like you come into this acceptance of the other person, but it's also an acceptance of yourself and where you're at, so that you can be true to how you're feeling, acknowledging what you're feeling, but then also allowing yourself to process and move through it so that you're not stuck in that energy of it, right? So like you mentioned, that guilt that a lot of parents feel, especially when they only have their kids half the time. And if they were the ones who made the decision to get out of the relationship because they recognized that it wasn't healthy, then it can impact the time that they spend with their kids, because then they're making parenting decisions based upon that guilt, as opposed to doing it from this place of love and this understanding that, okay, I know this was my choice. Yes, there's a part of me that feels bad for it, but I can feel that and I can release it so that when I'm with my kids, I'm still providing them with the structure and the discipline that they need, but also the compassion and the empathy.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so many things I could touch on there, but I want to give those of you listening some tools to walk away with if you don't already have them. So first of all, I just want to touch on what you were talking about, because you mentioned somatic and emotional and things like that. I talk about healing on 7 energy layers. What I've noticed is where people get stuck is they've only focused on 1 or 2 layers. And it's what you were just talking about, right? It's the emotions, it's the body, it's the energy, it's the knowledge. I'm not going to go into that too much right now, but I just wanted to say, yeah, you just highlight what you just said about healing in all these different ways. It's so important. And if you are if you're a parent and you have partial custody or like shared custody, so you have time alone, it is so important when your kids are not with you, as you just said, Corissa, to focus on your own healing. I mean, that's the biggest benefit you can give to your kids. But okay, I'll try to give you a few tools. So here's one of them. If you are somebody who's spending your quote unquote free time writing, rewriting the perfect email or text message to your ex because you're trying to resolve something, if you are in court and you are spending hours and hours and hours collecting information for court, those are some signs that there's something not going correctly or well in the way you interact with your ex. And I want to really encourage people listening, if this is you, what I just described, to get help from someone like Corissa or myself, or there's other resources out there, to get out of the fight. If it's been more than a year since you've left your ex and you're in court frequently and you're spending a lot of your time dealing with court matters, you want to get yourself out of the fight. The courts are set up, not intentionally, but the way the courts function favors the toxic person. And the toxic person loves to fight with you, and they will fight with you forever. I get so riled up about this because I have clients going through this who are like, when I get to this court decision, then I can work on healing. Then I can work on parenting. I need the courts to make this decision, whatever it is, custody, money, etc. I promise you that decision is not going to give you the result that you're hoping for in terms of now I'm free to do my next step. It's not going to happen. You're going to stay fighting forever. And you have the ability to get the result you want right now, even if there is something that needs to be settled in court. There are things that need to be settled in court. I'm not saying never go to court, right? Custody, you need a custody agreement. You need a divorce, a divorce settlement. All of those things are important. However, you should be spending like very small amounts of time. And the questions you have that you believe need to get resolved are not going to get resolved in court. They're going to get resolved through the work and strategies that Chris and I are talking about here. So that's first. If you're fighting with your ex and in court and spending lots and lots of time dealing with your ex, then you need help, and please get help because you will be there. I have another person I spoke with who's been in court for 12 years. Like, please don't do that. If you're listening, please don't do that. Get help.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. I just wanted to share that if you listen to this episode or this little snip of this episode and recognize that perhaps you are constantly engaging in a fight with your narcissistic ex. So every time you get a text message, every time they're trying to take you to court, or every email becomes a battle with your narcissistic ex, then I want to highly encourage you to start to do the work on your nervous system to get you out of that fight or flight that Veronika highlighted in this conversation. If you're constantly engaging in the battle, if you're always returning back a text message, or you're responding to a text message or an email with as much vim and vigor as they're throwing at you, then you're just continuing to escalate the conflict in the relationship. What you want to do is you want to learn to pause, take some deep breaths, use some somatic tools to ground yourself back into your ventral vagal nervous system state, meaning that you want to get out of the emotional reactionary limbic system of your brain and bring your prefrontal cortex back online, which is the center of the brain that is responsible for rational, reasonable, and logical thinking. When you're able to do that, you can then respond in a way that is non-emotional, in a way that is productive and effective, where you are clearly getting across your point without fanning the flames of the fire. This is a lot of the work that we do in Strong Her, my narcissistic trauma recovery group. And if you're interested in learning how to regulate your nervous system, then please reach out to me with the word regulate, and I'm happy to share with you how you can gain access to Module 1 of our trauma recovery program, which is all about the nervous system. I promise you it will create more peace and more calm in your interactions, and it's going to help you to stop engaging in the battle, to stop fanning the flames of chaos that your narcissistic ex is constantly trying to keep you engaged in. Because remember, if they keep you engaged in the battle, to them, that means you still care. And so they're still getting some sense of narcissistic supply from you when you continue to respond in an emotional way. It highlights for them that they still have some sort of control because they're getting you riled up, because they're getting an emotional reaction from you. My other quick trick that I want to share with you is if you are getting very incited by the emails and text messages that you're receiving from your ex, write out everything that you would like to say, put it into ChatGPT, and ask it to rewrite your response without any emotion and highlighting the main key points. You can then review that response that ChatGPT spits out to you. Maybe make some final edits to make sure that it's removed all the emotion and that it has actually highlighted and emphasized the key points of your response. And then copy paste it and use that to send back to your ex until you learn how to work with your nervous system to downregulate it and to get out of that fight or flight and to get out of that emotional reactive part of your brain. I really hope that helps. Any questions, you know where to find me. Until next week, everyone, be well. Thank you for tuning in to Awaken Her. Today's conversation may have ended, but your journey towards healing and empowerment is ongoing. Remember, every challenge you face is an opportunity to grow stronger and more resilient. If our stories today inspired you, consider sharing this episode with someone who needs these empowering messages. I'm Corissa Stepp, cheering you on as you take the steps to heal, grow, and transform your life. Keep believing in yourself, and until next time, stay empowered.